I suppose one of the disadvantages of this whole pandemic, the coronavirus, etc., is that a lot of us, myself included certainly, are spending more time indoors, staring at the computer, at the screen, webinaring, Zooming, WebExing, hangouting, doing whatever, and pretty much being in touch with other people on a whole range of issues that we deal with normally from the outside in an office or in meetings over a cup of coffee, if not a glass of wine. All this is now being done far more frequently via the screen, via the computer, via the multiple fora that are available for us. And of course, part of that is by choice, but part of that is also by compulsion. And this also happened to me since the famous signature of the normalization deal, the peace deal between Israel on the one hand and the United Arab Emirates and Bahrain on the other, under the tutelage of the US President Donald J. Trump. So I've been thinking about this normalization process that took some of us by surprise, about its consequences and about its impact, not only on the signatories themselves, but also on the whole Middle East, North Africa, and Gulf region. And part of that has been by talking to people or exchanging impressions or listening to people in webinars, again, on screen. So welcome to Intuitive Reactions, the MENA and Gulf regions. This is number 35. Over the past couple of weeks, as I was saying, I've made an effort to delve a little bit deeper, to scratch below the surface a bit as to what is happening with this deal that the Emiratis and the Bahrainis subscribed to, largely because of American pressure, but also because of their own personal considerations. I've spoken about this. I've already posted a couple of YouTube episodes on that. I've spoken on radio and the media about this. And what I have said, by the way, is that I've reaffirmed the sovereign right of any country to sue for peace, to make peace. Sue for peace, by the way, doesn't work in this instance because there was no war, there was no animosity, no bellicosity to start with. So to sue for peace is a bit dodgy. Anyway, to make peace between Israel and those countries is in the sovereign right of any party, be they the UAE and Bahrain, or probably other countries that might come out of the woodworks and make public what has been an open secret, either before the presidential elections in the US on 3rd of November, or when the results come out, or afterwards. So I've listened to people who know what they're talking about. For instance, I've tapped into something called the Palestine Forum, Multaqa Palestine in Arabic. And if you do not know this, go and look for it on your search engine. It's quite an interesting website. It's struggling, as are many of those organizations, but it is something that often brings together interesting thoughts and interesting articles or people. I've listened to people like Dr. Sari Hanafi from the AUB in Beirut, to Dr. Tariq Da'na at the Doha Institute for Graduate Studies in Qatar, to Dr. Hunaida Ghanim, who is the director of Madar in Ramallah, Palestine. I've also incidentally listen to a kindred legal spirit of mine, Dr. Ibrahim Freyhat, who is himself an expert on conflict resolution, and you cannot miss him because he's always on different programs, whether on Al Jazeera or elsewhere, bringing a conflict resolution or what I would call alternative dispute resolution perspective to some of the issues happening, whether in Libya, whether in Palestine, whether in the Gulf or elsewhere. So all this has been pretty much my staple, my daily diligence. And at the same time, yesterday, I came across a piece which I thought was quite good. And that piece is by somebody called Hesham Youssef. Hesham Youssef is an Egyptian diplomat. He was involved with the Arab-Israeli conflict since the 1990s. He was, in one way or another, part of the Madrid negotiations during that time. And he had basically done quite a lot, contributed quite a lot to the ongoing saga, and I call it a saga, a painful one at that, since then to 2020, when it comes not so much the Arab-Israeli conflict as much as the Israeli-Palestinian one. And he wrote an article which was published in Ahram, in the Egyptian Ahram online yesterday. And I'm going to put the link in the description box so that I do not have to repeat his arguments, and it's quite a long article, or to go through the motions of what he says and what he proposes. What I'm going to do instead in the few precious moments that I have today is very simply to make a few points. I've already admitted, I've already conceded that it is the sovereign right of any country to enter into a peace agreement, into a normalization agreement, no matter the reason, with Israel, whether that country is a Gulf Arab country or a Levantine, Middle East, North Africa country, such as Morocco, such as Sudan, such as Oman, or any other country as well. So that is done. Now, the couple of other questions I would suggest to you today as food for thought, and nothing more than food for thought, is one, a lot has been said about the inability of the Palestinians to get themselves sorted out, to get a state of their own, to negotiate for a state. And everybody I've spoken to or I've heard on screen or even privately in discussions have said that even my medical consultant, I posted this on a tweet, even my medical consultant said, Harry, what is wrong with the Palestinians? They've tumbled from one fiasco to another. And I posted a tweet in which I said basically the buzzards circling over carrion in relation to what has been happening in the region these days. But that be as it may, a lot of people have basically said that the Palestinians have mismanaged the negotiations. Everybody now seems to be of the opinion that Oslo was the biggest mistake that Palestinians could do during Arafat's time when they signed on the deal. 1993 was a bad day for Palestinians. They were basically tricked into accepting something which was not right. And since then, nothing really good has happened. Mahmoud Abbas, the president of the PNA, is basically a man who is retired, who is on political Zimmer frames, and he is basically not getting anything done. And somebody asked me the other day, Harry, isn't there one Palestinian who can actually get the Palestinians together and save the Palestinian cause, save the Palestinian conflict, and save some territory which could be called Palestine? Interesting, again, I go to the article in Al-Ahram, which I will put in the description box as well. That it touches that area too. Yes, the Palestinians have done lots of mistakes, admittedly. We all do lots of mistakes. I mean, even today, who's not doing lots of mistakes? Take the East Mediterranean. Hasn't Turkey committed lots of mistakes and now it's trying to back down a little bit? Has France not done lots of mistakes in Lebanon? Have the Lebanese, have the Syrians, have the Iraqis, have the Yemenis, have the Saudis. everybody in the region and outside the region. I don't want to go outside the region. This is an intuitive reaction for the MENA and Gulf regions. We all do mistakes, but there has been a concatenation of circumstances that have led to many, many mistakes being done. And we are where we are today, where it seems to me that according to the general consensus, the two-state solution is almost gone. The one-state solution or a rights-based solution is equally virtually impossible, because if Israel says no, if Netanyahu so blatantly says no and plays around the whole Trump, Pence, evangelical Christians scenario in order to push forward for Israel to establish itself in the occupied territories, if Israel can say no to a two-state solution, no matter what, do you really think it's going to agree to a rights-based one-state or binational solution where you have equal rights and equal vote? I doubt that is going to happen. And yes, the Palestinians have to look for solutions. And I think when I was listening to those webinars and those conversations across many fora, including the one at, for instance, the Palestine Forum and others, the message was quite clear that there is a new generation, and I'm not talking about a generation of 20-year-olds, I'm talking about a generation of 30s and even 40s who are saying it's time to take the cause, the conflict forward. Now, how do you take the conflict forward? You take the conflict forward not by parroting the same old tropes over and over and over and over again, but you look at it differently. And most importantly, you go out and you mobilize your constituencies outside the country and inside the country. Inside Palestine, Hamas and the PLO, the authority in Ramallah, the alternative authority in Gaza, and all the Palestinian factions should really come together, not just cosmetically, they've been doing it since the normalization deal, but they should come together and basically talk pragmatically and sensibly about how they could actually come with a common cause and a roadmap that they could use for the future. But the Palestinians should also go and sensitize, appeal to their constituencies abroad, and not leave the door open for Netanyahu to say whatever he wants and make it a reality that might is right. If America and Netanyahu agree together, everybody else doesn't matter. No, everybody else does matter. But the other constituencies, including the media and others, should be mobilized, should be sensitized in order to try to come with an alternative solution that would stop this spoliation of rights, this total discrimination against the Palestinians. And let me say one thing as well. When people talk, and I just said about the sovereign right of any country to establish peace ties with Israel, the point is not whether they have the right to do it or not. The point is, by doing it, they are breaking, they're fracturing, they're almost destroying the solidarity that the Arab states have shown to date, be it with the Arab Peace Initiative from 2002 or from other means, that yes, we want peace with Israel, but peace has a price, and that price is the return of the occupied territories. And if you look at the moment, what territories the Palestinians are asking for, and if people say the Palestinians are being absolutist in their attitude, they want the moon, they're not budging, they're not negotiating, for crying out loud, what are they going to negotiate about? They're only taking 22% or claiming 22% of mandatory Palestine. They've given all the rest away. They have frittered away so many rights, partly because of circumstances, partly because of realpolitik, partly because they themselves have mismanaged the negotiations and the difference between tactics and strategy has not always been clear in the Palestinian mind, and not only in the Palestinian mind. But let me now focus my attention here with all goodwill and good faith, because I really do want to see something come out of this. And at the moment, I can't really see it, because when I listen to all those WebExes and webinars and forums, when I read people like this article that you'll find the link in the description box, or many, many articles, when I listen to people like Robert Malley talking about the situation in Palestine today from the International Crisis Group, or I read and listen to somebody like Dr. Marwan Mashir, who is now with Carnegie and used to be Middle East Center and used to be before with the Jordanian government. All these people are as frustrated as I am, but nobody is able to find an egress, a way out, because even if we do, it's a question of physician, heal thyself. And the physician is not in London, is not in Brussels, is not in Washington, DC, is not necessarily even in Cairo or Amman. The physician resides in Palestine itself. And we need to find a way to try and come out of this rut, come out of this geriatric diplomacy, and try to sort of think outside the box, do some lateral thinking, and try to move forward. Talk is big, action is difficult, I know. I'm not pretending to be the man who can do it. But I was involved with second track negotiations during the Oslo years, the much maligned Oslo years. I've been involved with this journey of self-determination for Palestinians for many, many years. And therefore, I feel, as an Armenian, as somebody who wants to see Palestinian aspirations realized, and who feels sorry at the way politics is being drawn up these days through crass, populist interjections that last 15 minutes and no more, I want to give my opinion, just to share it with you in an episode as food for thought, and hope somewhere, somehow, someone will listen to me. Take care and all the best.